G'day cunts. Some will be aware that the second and still by far most popular video I made for this little channel of mine was a response to Jordan Shank's video talking about how we celebrate Australia Day on a date that essentially marks the beginning of the Indigenous genocide on this continent. Jordan being a bloke who doesn't find that fact all that important, me being a bloke who thinks that's pretty fucked. Part of the reason my video was so popular was because Jordan liked it and told people to go and watch it. I suppose in hindsight, I shouldn't have been that surprised. You could argue that my vid went into the actual reasons why Jordan was wrong more than a lot of his critics had or bothered to. Most importantly, I think though, was that I started the video by talking about how much admiration I had for the guy, which will go over well with anyone of course, possibly though even more so with Jordan, but as well I was pretty nice about the whole thing. I was trying to be more conciliatory in those days than I bother to now, and I guess that led me to be a bit forgiving. You see, it was only months later, having had a chance to reflect on the brief spike in popularity I got, that I realised something. My video had been used as a bit of a shield. It was being held up as an example of the correct way that Jordan's detractors should have gone about things, and I now find that pretty troubling. The relatively friendly, and let's be honest, fawning approach I used allowed Jordan and his fans room to avoid examining and changing their behaviour and positions. I guess in hindsight, I wish I'd gone a bit harder back then. Not necessarily because I think my vid was likely to have made a difference on its own, but because all those crew lining up to call him a Gronk etc. way back then have been proven correct. Since his Australia Day video, we've seen Jordan going further down this weird rabbit hole. Examples include expressing his admiration for Jordan Peterson, going on Isaac Butterfield's podcast, and that weird attack he launched on the AUWU, which did not lead to much despite the promises made. Less said about that the better at the moment I think, but yeah, I reckon he's gone from a pretty effective counter to the mainstream politic in this country, and I think a good voice for the left, to a pretty middling, narcissist, whose only solution to pretty much everything is vote Labour. That's a thing we've seen him hold to almost pathologically as well. I cannot recall seeing the guy criticise Labour once, or accept anyone else doing so. And there's a lot to criticise there of course. He's done some good stuff during too. The demonstration of the stark improvement that Labor could represent compared to the coalition for this country is, I think, his most important work. My favourite thing he's done lately was the Joe Hildebrand call-outs, but we got to assess this stuff on balance, don't we? Of course, no one is perfect. That's not what we're after. Additionally, of course, few people are all bad, and I do want to recognise the tendency of folks not to cancel people, because that isn't a thing, but to hound people unnecessarily and to look for fault where there is none. As I'm writing this, I'm watching people claim Ollie fucking Thorne is a transphobe. I gotta add too, I will never not be mad that despite her seeing off years of death and rape threats from the right, it was people from my political camps that finally chased Claudia Brown off the net because they couldn't handle a sock dem being a sock dem. So yeah, I'm certainly not saying cancel Jordan, and I mean we couldn't even if we wanted to. What I'm saying though is that on balance, Jordan fucking sucks. Now what's brought me to say this aloud, finally, is this video I'm about to show you. I'm sure many have seen it by now. Here it is anyway. It's Jordan discussing the cutting down of a tree that the Jabberong people, near Melbourne, claim as sacred, by a state government keen to build a new ramp for a highway.
Contentious point there. I do understand. I've read the Ombudsman's report on it and what they tried to do. The contentious point is that when they were planning it out, they didn't actually talk to the people directly. They talked to the landowners. And this is one of those things where it's like, can we really be telling them what trees are or aren't sacred when they've got their sacred land back after being displaced?
Yes, it's called science. It's called tallying tree rings. I'm sorry, I'm sick of this shit of everyone just being like, well, the rainbow sherping is a thing, so that's what happened in Australia, right? No, there was giant kangaroos and marsupial lions. Like, that existed, and we should just be celebrating the fact that those fossils exist. That is mad that we had marsupial lions. What is this giant snake? The giant snake sucks. It's called a fucking carpet python, dude. They exist now today. That's sick enough in itself. Like, it's just like, dude, come on. Like, if that tree is below the threshold of, like, when Indigenous people were saying that that is sacred tree, no. Like, science is science.
Okay, let's
Well,
wrap
no,
it.
I'm not taking an anti-science stance on it. I just wanted to, just see where you're going.
Look,
This
but,
is
like,
the
that was the
worst
point, like, everybody
discussion
was
to be
just
having
sitting
in the
there
middle
just-
of NIDOC week, guys.
What week?
Look, yeah.
I know.
Okay, obviously, yeah. Like, we get it. As part of science, I'm not on that Andrew Bolt train if there wasn't a genocide that was enacted on the indigenous people. Yeah, obviously there was. But, like, dude, science counts for everything.
Okay, so
You should just be looking at it for everything. Like, if that tree was not there before colonialism, it's a tree. It's a tree. Like, I hate how, like, this is the point that pissed me off on Twitter. They were saying that is...
Yeah, nah, mate. Like, fucking hell. He's so fucking far off base here. I don't remember learning about the methodology by which we measure the sacredness of an object during my science bachelor. Maybe I missed that day. But, like, who gives a fuck what the age of the tree is anyway? It may well be that the tree isn't as old as was thought by the sovereign owners of the land, although my understanding is that the government's number is disputed. But that doesn't change anything. It doesn't need to predate colonisation to be considered sacred. It's actually up to the Jabberong people to decide what is sacred to them. Or at least it fucking should be. And I'm here to tell you, they considered it sacred alright. I was up there myself when I was able, supporting the mob there as best I could, and I saw it all firsthand. The connection those folk feel to that tree, other trees, and the land itself in that area is profound and legitimate. Watch, for example, people lock onto the tree, risking fines in their freedom, or a bloke solemnly putting his hand on the trunk of an old gum after managing to outlast the cops trying to move his people off their own land, and tell me that shit isn't very real to them, and the only kind of real that matters in a case like this. But Jordan, I guess, needs a fucking avatar situation where such a connection is directly and empirically measurable before he decides it matters. And this is why my ass is so fucking chapped. Jordan has learned nothing. He clearly does not desire to learn anything either. This is the same smarmy attitude as before, with him applying his standards and opinions as though he's drunk from some font of universal truth and wisdom, despite him being so wrong it would be laughable if he didn't have a huge audience at his beck and call. And that's no exaggeration either. His stands are everywhere. Just the other day, someone commented on the video I discussed at the start, years after I made it, to say that it was, quote, the only good criticism of Jordan they had seen. And like, okay, I appreciate that this guy was trying to compliment me, but, well, was he really? Maybe like so many others, he just liked that I left room and kind of legitimised the status quo here. I'm tempted to think that this is true, because, like, he was plainly wrong. There's a heap of good Friendlyjordies crits out there. The only difference being, they're a bit meaner. The whole thing leaves a really bad taste in my mouth, and I've got to say I'm deeply troubled by an attitude from people that seems to imply that they have learned all they need to. You all know what I mean, I'm sure. Jordan isn't the only example. We all probably met people early on at uni like this. They knew a bit, knew a few things others didn't, were able to win arguments on their confidence as much as anything. Trouble came when they took that as evidence that they were essentially, well, finished. That trouble coming by way of the development of enormous egos and dogged adherence to preconceived ideas. Fucking cognitive dissonance dialed up to 9,000. Now, this is usually resolved by just ignoring the person in question. Trouble is, though, some of those people are charismatic enough to get a big platform going, and here we fucking are. You know, it's horrible to say, but I kind of wish Yilmaz had kicked the shit out of him in high school. Could have been just the humbling experience that Jordan needed. Anyway, I don't know how else to end this but to say, Gronk, thy name is Jordan. See yous.